They took her kidney, her fiancé, and her joy. But even then they fired her. Yet she rose from rock bottom. From rock bottom. This is a true story. The names and some events have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. You are listening to From Rock Bottom. Subscribe to the channel and keep respect in the comments. Do you have an inspiring story of overcoming challenges? Send it to us by email.
I worked for years. I was humiliated. I ended an engagement because I was transferred to another state, and I chose to prioritize the company. I went to work sick, and when I needed to have a kidney removed because I had neglected even my health, they fired me. I'm 35 years old. I'm an economist. I worked in the financial sector. I had come from nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nights wondering if I would have enough money to eat the next day. Then, one day, the opportunity came. A position opened at one of the most prestigious financial companies in the country. The salary? Incredible. The benefits? Beyond anything I had ever imagined. It felt perfect. Especially for someone like me, still paying off my student loan debt, still trying to breathe after years of struggle. I walked into that building for my first day, my heart pounding, my hands sweating, and I promised myself, I will make this work. And I did. The routine was brutal. 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. Endless reports, client meetings that stretched late into the night, mornings that started before sunrise. But I was determined. I absorbed everything. I learned faster than anyone expected. I solved problems others avoided. And little by little, I carved out my place. My name started to matter in that office. People began to notice. They said things like, "She's reliable. She's a problem solver. She's going places." And I believed it. I believed I was finally on the path I had been searching for all my life. 3 years in the company, and I got engaged. He was a good man. Not just good in the sense of being kind or polite, but good in a way that made you feel safe. He was the kind of person who listened, really listened, when you spoke. We met before I joined the company. At that time, I was still trying to figure out my life, struggling to find stability, and he was already this steady presence. He had a calm voice, warm eyes, and this quiet way of making me believe that everything would be okay. We started dating slowly. No rush, no games. Just dinners, walks, endless conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning. By the time I got that job offer, we were already deeply connected. And he was the first person I called when the news came. He was so proud. "You deserve this," he said. "You've worked so hard for so long, and now it's your turn." He knew it meant long hours. He knew it meant my life would change. But he supported me anyway. And in those early months, we really tried, to keep things normal. But the truth was, my schedule was insane. We went from seeing each other almost every day to fighting for one evening together every couple of weeks. And when we did meet, it was usually late. I'd be exhausted, my eyes burning from staring at a screen for 12 hours straight, my mind still half in the office. But he was patient. He would cook dinner, wait for me, with a glass of wine ready. Sometimes, we wouldn't even talk much. We'd just sit close, his hand holding mine, and that was enough. I remember one night, I had just finished one of the most brutal weeks of my life. I walked into his apartment and saw the table set, candles lit, music playing softly. I thought it was just one of his sweet gestures, until he got down on one knee. My breath caught in my throat. "I know life is crazy right now," he said. "I know we don't have as much time as we used to, but I also know one thing for sure. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." I cried. I didn't even try to hide it. And of course I said yes. It felt like a promise, a reminder that no matter how demanding my job became, there was someone waiting for me at the end of the day. Someone who believed in me, even when I barely had the energy to believe in myself. But promises, even the most sincere ones, can be tested. And soon, mine would be. Things changed the day my manager called me into his office. His tone was serious, but there was a certain excitement in his voice. "We have an opportunity," he said. "A big project in another state. We need someone who can handle the pressure, deal with the clients, and get results. And I think that person is you." It sounded flattering. It sounded like a step forward in my career. But it also sounded like distance. Distance from the life I had built. Distance from him. That night, I told him. We were sitting on the couch, the TV on but muted, because I didn't know how to start. "They want me to relocate," I said quietly. He stared at me for a moment. "For how long?" "At least a year. Maybe more." Silence. "And if you say no?" he finally asked. I looked away. "If I say no, I'm done. They'll find someone else. And I'll probably never get an offer like this again." He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just nodded. But I could see it in his eyes, the quiet hurt. We tried to make it work. We talked about visits, about making plans. But soon, reality hit us hard. My workdays in the new office were even longer than before. I was constantly traveling between client sites, sleeping in hotel rooms, living out of a suitcase. Our calls became shorter, less frequent. Sometimes I'd forget to answer his messages until hours later. The distance wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional. One weekend, I flew back for a surprise visit. I walked into his apartment with this hope that we'd reconnect instantly. But instead, it felt strange. Like we were visitors in each other's lives. We had dinner. We talked, but not about the things that mattered. And before the night was over, he said the words I had been dreading. "I love you, but I can't do this anymore." My heart sank. It wasn't anger in his voice. It was resignation. The kind that comes when love isn't enough to bridge the gap. I wanted to fight. I wanted to tell him I could fix it. But deep down, I knew he was right. So, I let him go. I told myself it was temporary, that once the project was done, maybe we'd find our way back to each other. But, in truth, that chapter had closed. And I buried myself even deeper into work. Because at least work was something I could control. At first, I thought I was lucky. I thought this company had given me everything. They reminded me of it constantly in meetings, in casual conversations, in subtle little comments. "We took a chance on you," they'd say. "We made you who you are." And somewhere along the way, I started to believe them. I stopped questioning the endless hours, the unrealistic targets, the way they blurred the line between my personal life and my job. Because I owed them, right? Because without them, I was nothing. But deep down, something in me was breaking. The office wasn't just demanding, it was toxic. Whispers in the hall, managers playing favorites, colleagues pitted against each other like we were contestants in a game where only one person could survive. Praise was rare, but criticism, that was a daily ritual. You weren't congratulated for success. You were reminded that it wasn't enough. I remember one Monday morning, after closing one of the biggest deals of my career the week before, my boss leaned over my desk and said, "Don't get too comfortable. What you did last week doesn't matter today." That sentence stayed with me. Day after day, I could feel my shine fading. I used to walk into rooms with energy, ideas, and light. Now, I walked in with heavy steps, my smile forced, my mind calculating every word before I said it, because anything could be twisted against me. My health began to unravel. I started taking medication to keep my anxiety in check, just so I could sit in meetings without my heart racing out of control. But the irony? I also took pills to keep myself awake, alert, and sharp enough to hit every impossible target they threw my way. I was medicating myself into two extremes, calm enough to endure the environment, wired enough to survive it. And neither of those versions of me felt like me anymore. I thought about leaving. Oh, I thought about it every single day. But then that little voice, the one they had planted in me, would speak up. "You can't leave. You owe them. You'll never have an opportunity like this again." And so, I stayed. Stayed until the days blended together. Stayed until my body started to whisper warnings I refused to hear. Stayed until I didn't just feel tired. I felt hollow. Looking back now, I see it clearly. But at the time, I truly believed the only way forward was to keep giving more, even if it meant giving up myself. My body had been trying to talk to me for months, but I didn't listen. The headaches became migraines. The exhaustion became something deeper, a heaviness I couldn't sleep away, no matter how many hours I tried to rest. And yet, I kept pushing. There were mornings when I'd wake up with my back screaming in pain, my stomach in knots, and still, I'd put on my work clothes, paint on my smile, and walk into that building like nothing was wrong. Because if I stopped, if I even slowed down, it would be seen as weakness, and weakness was unacceptable. Then came the pain in my side. Sharp, stabbing, relentless. At first, I thought it was stress. I told myself it was nothing. But one night, I ended up on the bathroom floor, drenched in sweat, barely able to breathe. That was the night I finally went to the hospital. After a battery of tests, the doctor sat me down. His face was serious. He didn't sugarcoat it. "You've been ignoring your body for too long. Your kidney is failing. We need to operate. And soon." I stared at him, trying to process his words. "If you keep living like this," he continued, "your body will shut down. And if that happens, I'm not talking about losing your job. I'm talking about losing your life. You need to slow down. You need to take care of your body. and your mind. Or one day, someone will be looking at you in a coffin. His words hit me harder than anything my bosses had ever said. But even then, a part of me thought, how quickly can I recover so I can get back to work? That's how deep the trap was. The surgery was scheduled quickly. The days leading up to it felt like a blur, a mix of fear, exhaustion, and this strange guilt that I was letting the company down. The night before, I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling hooked to IV lines, and all I could think was, I hope this doesn't affect my quarterly results. That's how twisted my mind had become. The surgery happened. I woke up groggy, with tubes, pain, and a doctor telling me it went well. But the damage to my body had been years in the making. Recovery wouldn't be quick. Even lying there, I answered work emails. I sent updates to my team. I told my boss I'd be back sooner than they thought. Weeks later, I walked back into that office, pale, thinner, still sore, but determined to prove my worth. I didn't expect the meeting that was waiting for me. My boss called me into his office. The blinds were half closed, sunlight slicing through the dust in the air. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't ask about my recovery. He just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes cold. "You know," he said, "I really thought you'd make it. I thought you'd be partner material one day." I managed a small, hopeful smile. But it didn't last. "Turns out, you were just a false promise. Some people aren't born for this life. Maybe you should think about jobs that are less important, less prestigious." The words hit me like a punch. My stomach twisted. My hands went cold. I tried to speak, but he kept going. "We need people who can handle the pressure, people who don't crumble when things get tough. And frankly, I don't think that's you." He slid the envelope across the desk. "Just like that years of sacrifice. My health, my relationship, my dreams, all reduced to a few sheets of paper and a cold goodbye." I walked out of that building feeling empty. Not angry, not sad, just nothing. I left the building with the envelope in my hand. It felt heavier than it should. Not because of the paper, but because of what it meant. I had given them everything, my health, my weekends, my sleep, my peace of mind. I had worked through the flu. I had skipped family events. I had postponed my own wedding. And still, I wasn't enough for them. That night, I didn't even turn on the lights when I got home. I just collapsed on the bed and stared at the ceiling, my body aching, my chest tight. The silence in the room was unbearable. I thought maybe, just maybe, one of my colleagues would call. Maybe someone would send a message. "Hey, are you okay? I heard what happened. You didn't deserve that." But nothing came. No calls, no texts. People I had mentored, people I had covered for when they missed deadlines, people who had cried in my office, and I had defended in meetings. They were silent. I spent days like that, lying in bed, curtains closed, my phone face down, sleeping through the day, crying through the night. And when the crying became too much, I would take the pills the doctor had prescribed to calm my anxiety, to help me sleep. Sometimes, both at once. My savings were almost gone. Rent was due. And the reality hit me. I had nothing left in this city. No job, no partner, no safety net. The only option was to pack my life into 2 suitcases and go back to my parents' house, At 35 years old, moving back into my childhood bedroom, the walls still painted the same color, old posters still on the closet door. It felt like my life had been rewound, but everything was heavier now. My parents, they didn't understand. They couldn't. To them, losing a job meant you just go find another. They didn't see the years I had invested, the way that place had drained me. They didn't understand why I couldn't just bounce back the next morning. So I stayed quiet. And every night, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had just wasted the best years of my life. I had some money saved. Not just pocket change, but a decent amount. Enough that, if I stayed quiet, avoided big expenses, I could, in theory, live off it until I was 55. I even did the math. The numbers lined up. And for a brief, strange moment, I thought, maybe I could just disappear. Stay in my parents' house. Sleep late. Read books. Go for walks in the neighborhood. Pretend the world didn't exist. But the thought made my chest tight. Because that wasn't living. That was hiding. I didn't want another job. Not in finance. Not in that corporate world that had chewed me up and spit me out. I couldn't face that cycle again, the fake smiles, the endless reports, the wear-of-family speeches from people who would fire you without blinking. But I also couldn't imagine doing nothing. And every day that I stayed in that house, every morning that I woke up to the same view from my old bedroom window, I felt like I was slowly dissolving, like my life was shrinking to fit inside those four walls. Something in me whispered, if you stop moving now, you'll never start again. So I didn't. I didn't run to update my resume. I didn't start chasing job openings. I opened my laptop, sat on the edge of my bed, and started running numbers. You see, I had spent years in the financial market. I knew how to read balance sheets, how to calculate risk, how to see value where other people saw noise. I pulled up my bank accounts, my investment portfolio, every little asset I had. I looked at my savings, and for the first time, I didn't see just money. I saw possibility. I ran scenarios like I had done 1,000 times for clients. If I invested in high-yield dividend stocks, I could create a monthly income stream. If I diversified into rental properties, I could cover my fixed expenses. If I kept my withdrawal rate low enough, my capital could last forever. And here's the thing. I wasn't guessing. I knew how compounding worked. I knew how cash flow worked. The difference was, this time, I was building a plan for me. I started small. A modest apartment in a tourist area. I knew the numbers, the seasonal trends, the occupancy rates. It wasn't glamorous, but it was predictable. Then I adjusted my portfolio, shifting from aggressive growth to stable income-producing assets. Every month, the numbers began to tell a new story. A story where my bills were covered before I even opened my eyes in the morning. A story where I could wake up without an alarm clock. And that changed everything. It wasn't just the freedom of money. It was the freedom from fear. From the constant feeling that one person, one company, one bad day could destroy my life. And then, one afternoon, at a little coffee shop, I heard a familiar voice. I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Warm, familiar. The kind of voice that used to feel like home. I turned, and there he was. My ex-fiancé. the man I had once planned a whole future with. He looked different, softer somehow. Not in a weak way, but in a free way. Sun-kissed skin, casual clothes, a small laptop bag slung over his shoulder. We stared for a moment, the kind of long pause where every memory rushes in all at once. And then he smiled, that same smile that had once made me say yes at a candlelit dinner years ago. We sat down. We talked, and it felt effortless. He told me about his life, how he had left his corporate job too, how he'd become a digital nomad, traveling, working remotely, living by the ocean one month, and in the mountains the next. And then he looked at me and said, "I always thought you'd be the one to figure out a way to live on your own terms." I laughed, because somehow I had. I told him about my investments, about building a life where my money worked harder than I ever had to, about the mornings I woke up without rushing, about the quiet joy of being able to choose. We started meeting up. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into trips. And slowly, without forcing it, we became us again. The difference was this time, it wasn't built on rushed nights and stolen weekends. It was built on freedom, on choice, on waking up next to each other in different cities, with no alarm, no office to rush to, just life. And as I sit here, telling you this, I realize that losing everything I thought I needed was the only way I found the life I truly wanted. On choice, on waking up next to each other in different cities, with no alarm, no office to rush to, just life. And as I sit here, telling you this, I realize that losing everything I thought I needed was the only way I found the life I truly wanted.